Okay. So just to give you a little bit of an overview on what the webinar is going to contain. My system will change slides. So I'm going to give a brief overview and introduction on BIOPAMA. I apologize for those of you who have seen this a number of times, but what we really want to do is make sure that all these webinars are standalone. So if anyone does find them on YouTube or anywhere, they do get a little bit of background on BIOPAMA, but it will be very quick. And then I'm going to hand over to Andrew Cottam, who's from the Joint Research Centre, our implementing partners, to discuss more about the reference information system specifically. Then we'll have some time for question and answer. And as I said, please add any questions that you may have in the chat section. And then I'm going to just give a very brief overview of our webinar series that's planned for the rest of the year. So just a quick overview of the Eastern and Southern African Regional Office, our coverage. We cover 24 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa, from Sudan all the way down to South Africa, as well as all the Indian Ocean islands of Comores, Seychelles, Mauritius, and Madagascar. So quite a broad range of countries, also with varying needs and capacities and a level of protected areas, conservation legislation, policy. So we are trying to adapt the BIOPAMA program to meet as many of the needs across the region, based on two regional inception workshops that we held, one in Eastern Africa and one in Southern Africa last year, where governments identified their needs in terms of protected and conserved areas. So BIOPAMA is an initiative of the African, Caribbean and Pacific group of states, and it's financed by the European Union's 11th European Development Fund. It stands for Biodiversity and Protected Area Management Program. As I mentioned, our implementing partner, we are the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and a partner in this program because of our global protected areas and biodiversity conservation expertise. And then the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission, our partners in terms of scientific and technical expertise, which is specifically what this data webinar is focused on. The overall objective for BIOPAMA, which runs until 2023, is to contribute to improving the long-term conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and natural resources in protected areas and surrounding communities through the better use and monitoring of information and capacity development on management and governance. So just to highlight a couple of things in the objective is that it does cover conservation and sustainable use, as well as protected and or conserved areas, including the community areas around formal protected areas. And it is very much about data collection, monitoring, the use of data for better decision making, and focused on management effectiveness and governance and equity. So it's about supporting the implementation and data collection related to the relevant existing regional and national strategies and action plans. So it's how can we as a program support governments to meet the targets indicators that they have, organizations to support the development of indicators, and then the measuring, the data collection, collation, analysis, and very much the reporting of that. So how do we get the message about conservation out to policymakers so that we can ensure positive change? So overall, it provides tailored support to all protected area actors, so from civil society, governments, communities, to address priorities in management and governance. So you'll see a big overlap there between governance and equity and management effectiveness. Large landscape planning covers both of those, and there is a lot of overlap between them in general in terms of benefit sharing from protected areas as part of a governance policy, also equity, but it relates to management effectiveness, so how the park managers engage with the communities and carry out benefit sharing. So we do this through three specific areas. The one is the regional observatories and information systems, which we have a regional resource hub, which I'll come to in the next slide, but that's very much the focus of this particular series of webinars. Then also capacity building related to the observatories and information systems, but also related to management effectiveness, governance, equity, all aspects related to that. And then we have our action component, which is a grant-making mechanism to effect action on the ground based on the identification of needs through the observatories and the capacity building exercises, to then have a grant-making mechanism, which the portal for that will be launched very soon, and we will keep everyone in touch on that. And so those three elements draw together and try and achieve the overall objective of BIOPAMA. So in terms of the regional resource hub, which is our regional observatory in Eastern and Southern Africa, we have the BIOPAMA Reference Information System right at the top, which is the global information system, which is run and supported and developed by the Joint Research Centre. And that is the focus of this webinar, how to use that, how to load information, get information from that. Then we have our Regional Resource Hub for Eastern and Southern Africa, which is our Regional Resource Hub host is the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development, or RCMRD, who are based in Nairobi and have a government mandate to cover the countries that we work with. Ngugi Kimani is our BIOPAMA focal point based there, and Beryl Ngamyora, who's also on the call, is our technical officer at BIOPAMA, who works very closely with the Regional Resource Hub to collect the data to support countries in terms of this. Then below this overall Regional Resource Hub for all 24 countries, we will have regional reference information systems for each of the regional economic commissions. So for the East African Community, the Intergovernmental Authority for Development, the Indian Ocean Commission, and then for the Southern African Development Community, we will be supporting the SADC Transfrontier Conservation Area portal, which is already existing and in place. And the idea is to provide capacity building and support to those 4 regional reference information systems to then feed very regional specific data into the Regional Resource Hub, which will be a one-stop shop for information related to Eastern and Southern Africa, but not reinventing the wheel. It's about connecting and linking to other systems. So I'm sure Andrew will cover a bit of that, but it's about using all that is already out there, linking it into one system where you can go and access information. So that's all from my side in terms of an overview. You can see on the slide now, we have a hashtag for Twitter if any of you on there would like to follow us, and also our overall BIOPAMA website, and then the website for the Regional Reference Information System that Andrew will be discussing shortly. So I'm just going to unshare quickly, and then I'm going to hand over to Andrew. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Okay, let's share my screen. Okay. I'm just, yeah. Sorry, Sue, okay. I just needed to install an extension. I think this should work. Good, okay, can you see my screen? There should be Sue in the middle. See that, James? Okay, so I will go to my presentation. Right. Good. Okay, thanks very much. So today we were going to talk, or we were going to present a webinar on data use and analysis. And but what we're going to do is we're going to continue from where we left off last time, which was looking at creating content in the RIS, and the specific data use and analysis webinar will be next time, and I think that's scheduled for April. They kind of overlap to a certain extent because a lot of the examples that I'm showing today are on analysis and presentation of existing information, but yeah, that will be in April. Okay, so just going back briefly to last time, the first webinar was really very much an introduction to the new reference information system, the version 2, which was released at the end of December last year. And in fact, on the call today is James Davey, who is the software engineer here at Joint Research Centre, who's responsible for implementing the reference information system. So I'm very glad he's here in case anything goes wrong, and I can scream, James! He's in the office, so that's good. Yeah, so there was an overview of the main features of the reference information system, maps, charts, and content. And then I showed you a couple of things, how to create features in OpenStreetMap, and then Bastian went through an example of creating some policies and targets. So the new system is very much concentrated on conservation targets, and Bastian showed how anybody who's registered in the system can go in and add in policies and targets, and also how to upload some management plans and documents. So today's webinar is very much about how do you, continuing on from Bastian's example of creating policies and targets, how do you create indicators? And indicators are the kind of the main type of content for for the reference information system. They're the things that allow you to track your progress against a specific target and see where you're succeeding and where you may need to have some kind of intervention or action. So the audience is very much technical people in the regional reference hubs, and as this is going to go out on YouTube and be watched by thousands of people in the other regional observatories of the BIOPAMA project as well, this could be useful as a kind of a tutorial about how you capture indicators in the tool, and also potentially to people who aren't directly involved in the project in BIOPAMA but are potential data providers and contributors who can give information and indicators. So today it's going to be very much just about how you add new indicators to the system. Just to really recap on the main features and the main kind of design aspects of the RIFs, it's concentrated on conservation targets. So that's essentially about how you can use information to achieve good conservation outcomes. It's community-based, so within the BIOPAMA project mainly, but not exclusively. There are plenty of people who are involved in the world of biodiversity informatics who can provide information. And in that sense, it's bottom-up, which means that anybody can provide information. And then we have this distributed content and ownership. And that knowledge is linked. This is the strapline for the BIOPAMA project, which is from, I can read it down there, from knowledge to action. And the last point about the design is, we don't want to just create yet another portal where you have access to hundreds and hundreds of layers, and then you can just while away hours just ticking layers on and off in a map and saying, great, yeah, it's a GIS mashup tool, but what does this actually achieve? So don't just publish and share just because you can. Keep focused on the targets. And so very much it's about, this is the way I kind of think of the new RIS. It's a system. Last time Bastian introduced a new NB-SAP for Ethiopia. I think it's Ethiopia. Anyway, a new NB-SAP and some targets, and those are your policy priorities. And the community, certainly within BIOPAMA in the regions, will go through and will prioritize their targets from these kinds of documents, from NB-SAPs, from protected area management plans. Excuse me. They will set their conservation priorities. And then you have this information dating where they have a target, and then other people can provide the information and the indicators to measure the progress against that target. And these data providers, this is just a small subset of people who could be producing relevant conservation information that could be introduced into the tool. Okay, I'll come back to that later. So that's enough talking, and I shall now go on to open the RIS. Right, so just as a very, very brief recap of the tool itself, it is a way of managing indicators, and they relate to state, pressure, or response. These are widely used in conservation. So state is the status of your habitats or species or ecosystem services. Pressure is obviously the threats to biodiversity, and then response are your policy responses. And they can be documents at the global level, like CBD, regional, could be, for example, in the Pacific, there's a regional framework for nature conservation. They could be national or local management plans, for example. And then for any of these sections, the lowest level is the indicator. And when we click on any item, we have, this is an indicator card. And in fact, I'm going to zoom in because I think it's probably, this text is a bit small. How's that looking? We're probably missing the end of the chart, but you can probably read it better. So this is a good example of an indicator where you can drill down through all the levels of the analysis that have been done. In this case, this is on deforestation between 2001 and 2016 within protected areas across the ACP region. And on the map is a pink layer, which is the Global Forest Watch deforestation from an external provider. And then here you have your regional statistics. So we can click on Eastern and Southern Africa. We click on it here. And when you drill down to the regional level, you then have a summary of the countries that have had their statistics calculated. And you can have a look at which ones are the ones with the largest area of forest loss. I can click on the country. I now go down to the country level, and I'm now looking beneath that at all of the protected areas that have had deforestation, and I can then click on an individual protected area and have a look at the time series. So for this particular one here, I'm not even going to embarrass myself and try and pronounce it. This protected area, there is a time series chart of deforestation in that protected area from Global Forest Watch, and that's the source up here, Global Forest Watch. So that's a kind of a fairly complete indicator from a global, regional, country to protected area level, and it allows you to identify pretty much, where you're succeeding and where action or interventions might need to be made. But today, what we're going to look at is how do you, as a content or as an indicator author, create something like this within the tool from existing information. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, what's a good place to start here, right. So last time Bastian created a new MB-SAP for Ethiopia. This time we're going to create a new one. In fact, let me just start from scratch. So I'm coming in as a complete new user and I want to add an indicator. So let's go to Uganda. And you'll notice when you zoom the map that the only policies that you see on the map are the ones that are within your current viewport. So it means that, especially if you have a lot of policies at the local level, like management plans, you don't want a list of 10,000 that don't occur, where you're not interested. So it only shows you the ones that are relevant. So we have here the Uganda NB-SAP, which I entered earlier on, and that's linking to the NB-SAP for Uganda, which is here downloaded, and I've got some targets in here. And one of those targets is basically the complementary target for CBD target 11, which is the 17% terrestrial coverage, protected area coverage. And there's that here. By 2020, the rate of loss, this first one, by 2020, at least 17% is protected of terrestrial areas. And then another target underneath here is relating to forests, which I'm going to come on to in a minute. So I created both of those, the national policy and the targets that are within it. But underneath here, at the moment, there are no indicators for that target. So what I'm going to do now is go and add an indicator. So I have to log in. And when you log in, the picture becomes less pixelated. Nice one, James. So if I now go to my MB-SAP and my target, if I click on add data, I can now add in an indicator. So there's some information, some metadata that you have to put in. I hope you can all read this. There's some information I have to put in on the metadata about the indicator, and then the actual, I'll come on to this in a second, the tab that says data is where I'm getting that information from and how I'm going to visualize it in the indicator card. So to start with, I'm going to put in a title. So my indicator will be terrestrial protected area coverage through time, for example. And I choose where that indicator will be, because in many cases an indicator will be reusable, so it could appear in any number of policies or targets. So this is just a way to apply it to a set of targets, for example, if you want to. But in this case, I'm only going to pick one. So I've selected my indicator. Let me pick a nice image for it. This one. That's what I'm going to use. And then there's some text that has to go in for the indicator, which is in here somewhere. Okay. Paste that in. If I want to, I can put some links into a fact sheet, for example, for that indicator, and with the indicators that are part of the Digital Observatory for Protected Areas here at JRC, DOPA, they have fact sheets to go with them, so they would go in there. Now, if I want to, I can put some additional information in, which I won't for the moment. Other than this indicator target value will show on the chart, I think it's not currently implemented, but it will show you a line on the chart if you have a target that you're trying to reach, a numeric target. So we'll stick one in, 17%. And then here, this is hopefully where I won't lose you, but this is the most complicated part of creating an indicator. This is where you have to go through and say, where is the information coming from? And you have to configure what the chart will look like and what the map will look like. So this is a way of really making people focus on absolutely what information they are going to provide that's relevant to this target. And here, this add map layers will allow you to select a map for all of the levels. So as you're going down from regional, country, global, regional, country, protected area, that layer will show all the time. So in the example that I showed before, that layer was Global Forest Watch. So that was the one that was selected to show all the time. Then underneath here we have get data from, and I won't go into too much detail at the moment, but REST. What REST is it's a kind of an industry standard way of exchanging data between computers, and it's widely used in providing information in a structured way that can be interpreted and then used in software. And for example, there's 3 examples I want to show you. This is an example from DOPA. So DOPA provides a whole set of services globally on all protected areas greater than 25 kilometers squared. And that information is available through a set of services. And effectively, a REST service is just a URL. So this here is the REST URL that will get the information that you can see presented here. And this is the protected area statistics for a whole set of countries. And that's all it is, a URL. A REST service is simply a URL, and it links to information. I can also see the UN statistics have got their own set of services, and this is one here, which is relating to, this was fishing, I can't remember what the actual, yeah, it's encoded. But again, the information is presented in a simple way. Then the one I'm going to use here is, doesn't matter about the URL, but this is the information. So this is something called JSON, and it's the information that we're going to use in presenting the indicator information. Oh, okay. So if I go back to the indicator, okay. So I'm now going to put that URL into
Andrew? Bastian?
Hi, Sue. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear Andrew, or is he also frozen for you?
No, yeah, I've lost him a while back.
Okay,
Seems
no.
that they've,
I
yeah,
wasn't sure if it was my system or his. Let me
no.
try and get hold. Bastian, can you hear us? Sorry, everyone. Not sure what. Hopefully, they're not having an evacuation at JLC. Can anyone from JLC hear us? Ashwell, can you hear us?
Yep, I can, definitely. I'm here, I'm listening.
Nice to have you on with us. Okay, so I see Stephanus can hear us. That must be a JLC issue. Bastian, can you hear us? No, must maybe their Wi-Fi went down. Let me try and unshare his screen. Okay, yeah, so Lucy can hear us in the UK, so it must be a JRC issue. Well, in the interim, hopefully they will reboot. I'm just going to quickly I'll go to the end where we were going to go, the overview. Sorry about this, I'm not sure what has happened. But I just want to give you an overview of the plan series for until they can rejoin us for the rest of the year, just so as not to keep you waiting and wasting your time. So we did have the first webinar that Andrew gave a brief overview to at the beginning of his session on data exploration, discovery, and sharing. For those of you who missed it, it is available on the BIOPAMA YouTube channel, which you're also welcome to follow. On that YouTube channel, we also have other webinars from the Caribbean and the Pacific. The Caribbean have also done one on management effectiveness, capacity building. So there are some really interesting webinars there that you're welcome to have a look at and follow the channel to keep updated whenever we do load one. And we'll be loading all the webinars that we're going to be doing this year to that channel. And so as I mentioned in the beginning, they will be standalone, so you can either watch them alone, and there will be recaps if they are linked like Andrew did today. In terms of the webinar series that we have planned, our next one, Andrew also mentioned, it will be in late April. We will confirm dates for these all in the next couple of weeks or so. But the next one will be on the more advanced features on the reference information system, so looking specifically at use and analysis. So data that has already been loaded by data providers, how do you now take that data on the reference information system and make it into some kind of product or tool or service that is useful for policy or decision makers? Then in late May, we're going to have a webinar on resourcing and financing of protected and conserved areas, which will be run by Candace Stevens from BirdLife South Africa, who is working on a lot of different tax incentives and different ways of resourcing and financing protected areas. Then in early July, we'll be having one on the Integrated Management Effectiveness Tool, the IMET tool, which JRC has developed. And we will be how to use it, why to use it, what does it involve, trying to look at the different aspects of the IMET. I see Andrew's back, but I'll just carry on going with this so long. Then mid-August, we're going to do another one on the more advanced features on the reference information system. As more information is being loaded onto the system, obviously there will be more that one can do. So we'll have another session there on what you can do with the system. Then in September, we'll be doing one on an overview of management effectiveness tools. So as you all are very aware, there are numerous tools out there, and we're going to be doing some capacity building and workshops on these tools before that webinar, and the idea is to feed into that. We also have a consultancy going at the moment, which is looking at across the Eastern and Southern African region, who is using what tools, where, what challenges they're having with them. And so the idea with this webinar will be to discuss all of that and which tool is the most efficient to use in a particular situation and how to use it and time, how long it takes to do it. So yeah, just advising on management effectiveness tools. and then in November, one on governance and equity. So we've realized through the work we've been doing the last few months that a lot of people are unclear on the difference between governance and equity, or how they are involved in policy and legislation. So we'll be looking at a webinar on that. And then in early December, we'll be doing one specifically on the Eastern and Southern African BIOPAMA Regional Resource Hub. So our resource hub hosts the RCMRD, Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development. We'll be doing a whole webinar on how to use the Eastern and Southern African Resource Hub, which will be up and running by then. So that is the plan for our webinar series, and we really welcome any other ideas. If you'd like us, we can host a webinar for you that you would like to be involved in or you would like to present on, so please do let us know. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Andrew now. It looks like they are all back. Sorry about the interruption.
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. I don't know if we just
froze, okay. Then you disappeared.
Can you hear me, Sue?
I can, thank you.
Good, hooray. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, when I said, oh, this is where we might lose people because it gets technical, we literally did lose people. Yeah, we lost internet, so hopefully that won't happen again. Okay, let me share my screen. I don't remember where I was. Well, I do vaguely. Okay, that's right, I was adding. Oh, all that stuff is lost. That's annoying. We'll go back into Uganda then, and I'll add in the indicator. So here we are, Uganda, MBSAP, add my data, and oh, terrestrial, sorry about this. Okay, I think that's all right. Right, so I was talking about map layers, so they will be generic ones, and then what are called REST services, and we're creating a chart at the national level for Uganda, which is going to be the time series of protected area coverage. So I'll put in Uganda terrestrial protected area coverage. When I mentioned map layers before, that was for the indicator that would appear for the whole time. This one here, where it says map layers, allows you to have a different map layer depending on what scale you're at. So the idea here is that, for example, land cover mapping. If you're looking at a particular target that relates to land cover mapping, you might have a continental scale land cover map, like for Africa, it could be the Global Land Cover 2000, for example. But as you zoom in, you may want to see something that's been more specific, like a national habitat inventory or something like that. So you can have different layers depending on where the user is and what level they're looking at in the data. Okay, so this is going to be available at the country level. Now this is where I give it the information about where the data is coming from. So I'll put in my endpoint, my URL. I'm going to speed up because we haven't got a huge amount of time. Some of this stuff you can fill in a lot more detail. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm just going to go through and put the basic stuff in. So this is now configuring the chart. So I give it the information about things like the axis, just like you would in Excel. It's exactly the same. And okay, I'm giving it information on what's on the y-axis. That's that. And then this is my series. So you can have as many series as you'd like on the chart if you have multiple variables in your data that you want to map. Okay, so that's my chart done. So that should be it. I've given it the information about where the data is coming from and what the chart needs to look like. Normally what you would do is you would save this as pending approval, which means that somebody would then need to, in the workflow, would need to look at it and validate it and say, yeah, that's fine, you can publish that. But I'll just go straight in now and publish it. And now I've got my terrestrial protected area coverage time series. So when I click on that, I should see for Uganda, I've now got my, oh, I forgot to put the description in the indicator, but that would normally appear underneath here. So what I've done then, in summary, is I've taken a service that's provided by somebody else, and I've embedded it within this site and linked it to a policy. And it also allows me to filter all the protected areas on the map by date. So if I only want to see the ones that have been designated in the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years, then I can filter it. So that's just one really, really quick example. And I want to show you one other one, which is for this second target. So we have another target here that relates to deforestation. And I'm going to do the same as I did last time. I'm going to put in a new indicator, national deforestation. And again, this relates to policy in Uganda. This one. And instead of creating a chart this time, all I'm going to do is I'm going to link to, so if I now go to my data tab, all I'm going to do this time is I'm going to put in the Global Forest Watch map, because that's obviously related to deforestation. There are some more specific indicators within the NBSAP, but you know, and if I had the information available, then I could put them in here. But for now, I'm just going to put in the, it's in pink because it hasn't been validated yet. That's why. So when I click on that one, national deforestation for Uganda, well, I should say Uganda, this is showing me in pink all those areas from the Global Forest Watch. So that's a very quick run through. Sorry about the interruption of taking data that you have access to, whether it's your own data or whether it's somebody else's data, and publishing it within the reference information system. And really the idea for this, for the global one, is to have global data sets, global indicators, and within the regional reference hubs or resource hubs, or for the regional observatories, they will have their own regional and national and local data to put in, and they will be able to tailor the interface to their own kind of branding and their own organization as well. So that I think I've got one more slide. Yeah, two more slides. One more slide. So I've shown you how to create new content using existing services, but we want to make it much easier for people to put their own data in. So, for example, creating indicators using spreadsheets or using Google Sheets or whatever. So having other ways to get the data in as quickly as possible and as easily as possible. And additional content types, so images, protected area boundaries, there's a whole set of other things. There's contact information on enforcement agencies or ministries, and there's a whole set of new features which we've kind of got in. I just want to show you this very quickly. This is a kind of a roadmap to the new features in the reference information system. And it's got a whole set of features in the left-hand side, and then on the right here, it's got which versions they appear in. So V2 is the one that's available now, and V2.1 is sometime in the future. No specific dates given, but so there's new features that are going to be in mapping, in indicators, conservation networks, protected areas information, charting, reporting. There's a whole range of stuff, and one of the big ones is, so far we've produced a user interface that's kind of looking at individual indicators, and we want a way of summarizing progress against a whole range of targets in one screen, so that you can see your overall progress. And also there is I haven't shown them at all today, but the information that's in this interface is very much by indicator, but there are pages on protected areas and countries and regions that summarize pretty much all of those indicators for those entities. So that's more than enough from me, and I will go back to Sue. Okay, thanks, Sue.
Super, thanks very much, Andrew. Are there any questions? Would anyone, you can just, let me unmute everyone. Please just ask your question if you'd like, or if you prefer to write a question. No questions, I see. Thanks, Ashwell. Yeah, so the idea, I see you've written about the GBIF data. Yeah, it is. Yeah, there are so many fantastic resources out there. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's not about, you know, having a new place where the data is. It's about linking to other systems. So Forest Watch, we're busy chatting to people about another observatory in Eastern African universities working on. So we are, I mean, any portals or resources that you know of, please share those with Beryl or myself or with the JRC, because the idea is to also make other portals and other points, you know, more accessible. So, and to give them more visibility, I think is the main point. Any questions? If there are no questions, then I really would like to thank Andrew very much for the presentation and for taking the time to prepare it and running through everything, and to both Andrew and James for the development of the reference information system, which really is a great tool. And as Andrew mentioned, the idea is to link at a really regional and then local or national and local level. So to really try and get more data from Eastern and Southern Africa into our regional resource hub that then feeds into this system. Again, to give more visibility to the data and what is out there. You can also join us on the BIOPAMA Yammer network, which we have, I don't know if any of you are on that. If you're not, it's a great resource. You can either just join the Eastern and Southern African page, where you will get data and information just specifically related to Eastern and Southern Africa, and you're welcome to upload if you're working on a report or you know of some publications. Please do join us on the Yammer network. It's a really great tool to share. We share opportunities in terms of workshops or funding or scholarships, and you can either, there's a full network, then there's one for each of the Caribbean, Pacific and Eastern and Southern African regions, and it really is a great resource. Also, we do monthly updates, stakeholder updates, that also outline the work that we're doing and other opportunities in the region. So if you're not already on the mailing list, I know a lot of you already are, please do either email me at sue.snyman@iucen.org, or otherwise you can put your email address in the chat now while we are still on the call. You can just send it to me privately if you don't want everyone else to have access to it, and I'll add you to the mailing list to get the updates. On those updates are also when the next webinars are and the links to the webinars. So any questions come to mind at the moment? Otherwise, we're going to end the webinar for now. But thank you all very much for taking the time out of, I know, very busy schedules to join us, and I hope that it was useful and that you learned something about the new reference information system. Great. Thank you, everyone.